Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is Big Ruben.
My name's Jose. How's it going?
Welcome to Men Redefining Manhood, a movement for fathers and men ready to rewrite what it means to be men. Let's redefine manhood together. Last week, we kind of touched base a little bit on why men shut down. This week, we're going to continue the conversation, but we're going to gear more into when you feel nothing, when we kind of get into the um, I guess ugly stage of like depression, feeling depressed, not wanting to do anything. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a great topic for us to talk about on bro because for a lot of people, might not know what it means to be depressed, what the symptoms of depression are, and especially men, right? Um, Being in denial or wanting to maintain a certain pace in life or productiveness as a way to avoid the actual symptoms.
hmm
So I think it's good, that we're bringing this topic up, that segues off of the previous
hmm
episode that we recorded, right? Where shutting down and how shutting down could lead to feeling depressed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think we really need to tone in on what depression is. We can kind of focus on everything being a provider, being dad, being boyfriend, husband, whatever, not really focusing on ourselves. And sometimes we'll get into the state where we may not, like you said, not even know what depression looks like. And we
Yeah.
may not, not want to do anything, not want to go out, not be as hungry, not want to do social events. Um, so looking at that is very important because that could lead to a whole nother path of destruction and issue for us men.
Absolutely. And while we're on that topic, right? It's also evident that men have a higher risk of suicide,
Yeah.
right? And so depression can lead to having suicidal ideation attempts and even uh, completing, right, the
Yeah.
the task of taking one's life. So being able to understand what depression is, and by the way, depression isn't just one thing or one symptom, right?
Yeah.
Rather, it's a criteria of symptoms that occur over a period of time
Mhm.
that would be important for us to look at, and to
Yeah.
determine, okay, you know what, am I just feeling tired? Because that may be a gray area where people might think, men might
Mhm.
think, I'm just tired, I'm burnt out, and so I just want to stay home. Or is it actual depression?
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, so when we talk about depression, I think that one of the key differences is your thought process in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're tired, you don't feel like doing anything, but you're just idle and your thought is stable, right? You know, you might still engage, you might still, right, offer a little bit of yourself to people and so forth. Yeah. But when you're depressed, and obviously there's different severities of depression, but when you're depressed and you're clinically depressed, your thought process changes. Now it becomes negative based, right? Like,
Mhm.
what's the purpose of life? Why am I
Mhm.
even here?
Yeah.
Like, you know what? It sucks to be where I'm at now, right? It's very negative based.
Yeah.
And then you want to try to stay away from people. You really don't want to engage. You don't feel invested maybe in activities that you once did. And, you know, so
Yeah. Yeah. I think of it in areas like, you know, your ability may go up, like you said, activities maybe before that you didn't that you enjoy doing, you don't find enjoyment of anymore. Going to the
sure.
gym, playing basketball, hanging out with friends, being around your family. So that could be very destructive, and it could lead to a lot of other things, like what we talked about in the past. Destructive behavior, and where it could lead to, substance use. It can lead to different drugs, risky behaviors. Um, that could lead to a lot of scary choices and scary outcomes, and in return affect everybody around you. Um,
Yeah.
so
And that's a
something
big
to be
one, right? How
mindful
does it
for.
affect? How does your how do you shutting down, and if a person becomes depressed, how does it affect the family system and the overall performance?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you know if as a man, you're assuming that there's kids involved, there's a spouse involved, and they're used to seeing you function a certain way, and all of a sudden that changes,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a big question there. What's going on, right?
Yeah.
Why is dad not being himself? Why
Yeah.
is dad not smiling or cracking a joke like he did before?
Yeah.
And then men don't tend to be open about these things, right, with their family, right? I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to worry them. I don't want that type of an approach, right? When in reality, it should be something that can serve as education as well, right? Listen, I'm feeling this way. I may be feeling depressed, right? So that it also helps. It helps your family system, but you also educate them on why you're feeling a certain way, so that if they see that you're, a little bit, feeling a little sluggish or not very interested or whatnot, that they know, okay, you know what,
Yeah.
dad needs some help or some support.
But also think of the guys that don't have the family.
Yes.
One of the things that I did see recently on social media was there was a guy, he was telling, there was a group of guys that were sitting together doing a podcast, and one of the guys was like, "Hey, you can always feel free to reach out to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you my number before this is done." Da, da, da. But one of the older guys kind of raised his hand, and he's like, "Well, that's cool and all." He's all, "But I think me being the older guy, the OG here, I need to say this. Like, I think a lot of us guys get to the point where we don't want to open up. We don't want to talk about us being depressed or feeling the feelings that we feel because to other men, just in general, because we know the weight that we carry ourselves of everything that we have to do, being a father, provider, husband, boyfriend, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we know the weight of it, and it could be scary. It could be scary going off and telling, "Hey, Jose,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm carrying all this weight." Like before we even came in, we kind of checked in. You're like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, it's a it's been a little heavy week
Sure.
this week."
Yeah.
That could be scary for some, for the guys that don't normally do it, and I guess be understanding as well. Like, hey, what weight is Jose carrying today? That
Mm-hmm.
how dare I come bring my own weight when maybe Jose's carrying something heavy as well. You know what I mean? So I think that's where us men have to kind of get out of that notion of doing that. And watching that video made me really think, like, dang, is that why a lot of us men don't share? Because
Mm-hmm.
we know the weight of it is of what it is to be a man. So
Mm-hmm.
why even express it to one of our boys?
Right. Right.
It's like, how am I going to tell him, like, I'm dealing with this? He's going to look at me like, bro, I'm dealing with the same kind of, that and some maybe,
Yeah.
so that could be a huge challenge as well,
Sure.
you know?
The upside to that can also be, though, that it creates a level of relatedness, right? That
Yeah.
that because you're dealing with something, and if I'm dealing with something similar, maybe for some people it may feel like you're putting something on someone else that's already dealing with something,
Yeah.
but the person on the receiving end may be like, hey, you know what, I can connect with this person because
Mm-hmm.
I think this person can understand me because I'm going through the same thing and I know what it feels like, right?
Yeah.
So it can also help, right?
Yeah.
But I agree with you,
Yeah.
that it does create um some sort of hesitation, yeah,
Yeah.
some sort of hesitation to where you question whether or not you should offer your
Yeah.
experience or whatnot.
Yeah.
um but what do you think? Do you think that if a if a close relationship is established, a safe environment is provided, and people can clarify boundaries, would that work? Like,
Oh yeah.
if we were to say, hey man, you know what, I don't want you, if I can help in any way, let me know. I want you to know that, it's not a burden to me. And hopefully if I say something, that you may be able to offer some support or something in that, hopefully it's not a burden on you,
Yeah.
and create that type of a, like, I don't know, expectation or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we created this.
Yeah.
For it to be that space to come to, that okay, like it's okay to have those conversations. I look at it and I talk about him a lot. My barber,
Hmm.
we talk about a lot of personal stuff, and up until recently when he did open his big barber shop, which it gave me a sense of relief and pride. Like he called me, he's like, hey man, I'm meeting with the landlord this week for the place that I'm getting, and what's your thought, what's your opinion on it,
Hmm.
but that's because of that relationship that me and him built,
Right.
on
Right.
having those hard conversations, on having, like, hey, dude, like, there's some areas that, I may be struggling, and he'll tell me vice versa. And yeah, we do have a lot of stuff in common, but I feel we built that.
Right.
Like, if I didn't feel like we could have done that, then I wouldn't have said nothing.
Right.
Like what the guy was saying, like, how dare I bring something to him if I can fathom as a man to think like, what is he carrying? But no,
Yeah.
we built that relationship and that friendship to be cool with it, having those conversations and
Right.
saying, hey, you know what? Like, then when he did call me and he's like, what do you think? That felt good.
Sure.
It felt like, okay, like, wow, okay, this
Yeah.
is this is cool. I'm a lot older than him, so I'm like, cool. I want to be able to be that guide. And again, I feel that that's why we started this podcast, of being
Yeah.
being the guide for other men out there, and being kind of the example of, the right and the wrong.
Yeah. And we got to normalize it too, bro.
Yeah.
Like we got to normalize and accept the fact that, we're human as well, and that we also wear out, we also burn out, we also
Yeah.
break, at some point in time.
Yeah.
And if we don't accept that, and if we don't create, right, healthy outlets for ourselves and a support system for ourselves, then in the process, right, we may end up becoming absent for those that care for us,
Yeah.
right? Our children, our family, our friends, right? Because we may not be able to have that capacity to be able to, offer anything, presence, conversation, right? Reciprocal support. If we're broken, if we're
Mhm.
struggling, if we're, not that we're not gonna, right? But
Yeah.
if we leave it unattended, and we don't, create a support system, that's probably where we're headed,
Yeah.
as men, and I think so. Yeah, like what you mentioned, like that is, it's good that we were able to come together and create this, and hopefully it's helpful for other men, and they can begin to see the normal side of being a man, and being okay with seeking help and so forth.
Yeah. And being vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because yeah, we have the rate for the, let's put it out there. The rate of suicide is humongous when it comes to men. I was actually watching a video uh, on IG earlier, and it was saying that I guess like one man in every 14 minutes commits suicide.
Yeah.
And that's a huge tale. Like,
Absolutely.
wow, like one. Think about it, one in every 14 minutes. So every every hour, four people every hour a man is killing himself.
Yeah. So when you
And
think
it's like
about
that's
this, right? um and I've mentioned this before. You look at all of the, like, all of, like, the active shooters scenarios, right?
mhm,
They're all men,
yeah,
right? When you look at the majority, somewhere in the 90s for sure,
mhm,
of murder suicides,
Yeah.
the domestic murder suicides in a household,
Yeah.
all men,
Yeah. Or serial
right?
killers.
Yeah, all men, right?
Yeah.
And what do the neighbors say? He was a good guy,
Yeah. He was, he was
no
an,
problem, everything was
yeah.
good.
He was
Like,
such a good neighbor. I'm
yeah,
like,
good neighbor, said hi, everything didn't,
yeah,
right? Well,
played
that's
all the parts.
probably the issue, that
Yeah.
the neighbor did, all it said was hi, but didn't do anything else or more,
Yeah.
right? Didn't ask for help, didn't, and
Yeah.
then, comes the big bang, right?
Yeah.
So,
It's very, very telling.
yeah, and what I've learned too is that, you know, there's that contemplation stage, right? Where a person attempts, where a person contemplates, and then eventually a person gets to a point of succeeding, and oftentimes heading down the path of suicide. It's a spur of the moment impulsive decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something that over time has been pondered on, has been contemplated on, but it may be something that 3 months later breaks the camel's back and boom, right?
Yeah. Something that
and
may set it off.
and so in those moments is probably when support helps, right? Or a person that goes off on a binge, been doing well and everything, and all of a sudden, starts drinking and, just getting wasted and disappears. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
what happened?
Yeah. Where'd he
Same,
go?
same with drugs and so forth. So, um, yeah, depression is real, and we have to pay attention to it. We have to, we have to attend to the symptoms and understand what they are, but at the same time, know the difference between just being burnt out and tired and feeling depressed. You know, again, there's a significant difference. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can be tired, right? Get yourself some rest, get yourself back up to par, continue on with performing the way you did. But when you're depressed, it's a steady, prolonged process, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just not feeling it for weeks, months
Mm-hmm.
at a time,
Yeah.
and yeah, you're just not all there.
Yeah. And it could cause all kinds of other issues, and affect the family,
Yeah, yeah. So hopefully this is something that, for our listeners, they take into account, and they pay attention to it. Maybe it's not you, but maybe it's somebody that and you notice a difference in, a significant other or loved one or someone close to you, that all of a sudden their behavior changed, or their emotional output or their socialization has dropped. And you know please reach out, ask them if they're okay,
Mm-hmm.
check in on them.
It's
I
free to
remember
be
you.
kind.
What's that?
It's free to be kind.
Absolutely. And I remember, like, the other day, you're like, hey, hey, Jose, I've been thinking about you, man. And I really appreciated that, and I wanted to thank you for that. Because those are some of the things that we should be doing. We should be practicing, right?
Yeah.
We should just be checking in, and we should, keep, people that are important in our lives, keep them also in mind, and right, check in. Hey, how's everything coming
Yeah.
along? What's been going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I,
yeah,
I talk about it all the time. Nobody knows the battle that you're dealing with besides you and if you have a higher power.
sure,
At the end of the day, when you're sitting at the edge of your bed, I always tell my clients this, that are dealing with a lot of mental health issues. At the end of the day, when you're sitting at the edge of the bed, contemplating life, thinking of everything that's going on, what went good, what went bad, who you there for? Who's there for you?
yeah,
What are you doing to improve that situation?
yeah,
Who are we reaching out to? And it's very important that we look at that. Like, what areas can we fix, and what areas can we get the support in that we need? Because it's, yeah, mental health and depression and all kinds of other forms of mental health, and
yeah,
it's hard. It's a lot of work. I always tell my clients, mental health is not like a physical wound. You can't put a band-aid over it and watch it heal. It's something that we got to continuously work at,
yeah.
um, especially with like depression and men that struggle with it, and just guys that us guys that have such high expectations of ourselves, and family that may have those high expectations as well. We have to be mindful of how we're controlling those emotions.
Absolutely. And you hit something very important, that mental illness or mental having symptoms isn't something that you can put a band-aid on, right? And that's probably why people struggle with understanding other people that may be going through,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I have a client right now where she's struggling with a lot with depression, and her mom's just
Mm.
like, I just want her to just shake it off.
Yeah,
And I'm
it's all
like,
in her head,
yeah,
and
just do something different. And I was like, Senora, like that's not how it works.
that's not how it
So I gave
works.
her that analogy. I'm like, mental health is not like physical. You can't, it's not like a cut where you put a band-aid over it or you
Yeah,
put some Neosporin and it heals.
right.
Mental health is something that we got to work at every day.
Yeah,
The balance of it is like this all day long.
yeah.
There's
It's
some days that she's gonna have good days, and there's some days that she's gonna have bad days. It's just what skills we can learn, who we can, you know, have by ourselves to help her. What you need to
absolutely,
do is just be a helping factor to her. When you see that
absolutely,
she's struggling or you see that she's having a hard time, be there to be supportive.
absolutely,
That's all we could do because
absolutely.
there's a lot of challenges behind it. You don't really know what she's been through. Yeah, that's your daughter, but you really don't know what she's really been through. Just
Hmm.
like she doesn't know what you've really been through.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have to be mindful of that and be kind to each other because at the end of the day, you don't know her full story.
Yeah. Yeah. And because it's invisible, it makes it very difficult, right? Like,
Yeah.
for example, I'm glad that you bring up these analogies, right? Like,
Mhm.
if you had an individual that was in a wheelchair and had a broken leg, you would say, "Oh, let me help him," right?
Yeah.
What do you need? You need a glass of water. Do you need me to bring you something, right? Because
You physically can
you
see.
physically can see that they can't get up. They're in a wheelchair. They have a broken leg,
Hmm.
and so you give yourself more to that person
Yeah.
because you can
More empathy.
see that there's a limitation, right?
Yeah.
But those types of limitations also exist mentally,
Hmm.
right? You might not see that a person has a broken leg, but mentally the person doesn't have the capacity to believe that they can do something, right?
Yeah.
Or mentally they may be drained and don't have the energy to push forward, and that's where the
That's
support
where.
system comes
Yeah.
in and can
That's where
help.
we need to step in and
Yeah,
be a help being a protective factor for people and helping. Like, hey, I'm here. I'm
absolutely,
here to be that extra leg, that crutch for you at the moment. Because there's a lot of struggle out there, and you know,
absolutely, absolutely, man.
one kind thing may change their perspective of themselves or life.
Absolutely, that's great. That's absolutely you're man, right on target, bro. You,
Yeah,
you you said exactly what I was thinking. Like,
yeah,
yeah, sometimes that's all that may take,
yeah,
for to help somebody, like, whoa, change everything, right?
yeah,
Perspective, everything about the moment and about how they're feeling, and
mm,
to feel that someone's caring for them, right? May change.
yeah. And it
May,
may
may
not happen at the moment.
Yeah,
Like I think I talked about this. I think I talked about it in a previous podcast or at work. I had a client that. I honestly, I was like, I don't know. I've tried everything. I've tried, doing what I can with him,
yeah,
providing as much support, being as much as I could, and I got to the point where I don't think it's going to be enough for him.
hmm,
And I remember, like yesterday, me and my wife and my daughter were out eating. We went to a birthday party, and I look over and I could see the guy's brother, which he actually got involved in some of the conversations that I had and with his brother, and I seen him and he came over, and I felt this pit in my stomach, like, dang, he's gonna tell me like he died or something. Like I felt like like
hmm,
that sourness in your stomach, and I'm like, so he comes over and he's like, hey man, I just want to thank you. Like my brother's doing really good right now,
nice.
and he's got a job, he got an apartment now, he's doing good.
That's
And I was
awesome.
just like, oh, shoot.
Wow.
Okay. So you never know.
You never
It may not
know.
happen
Yeah,
right away,
yeah,
but the small things that we do now
yes.
may affect somebody down the road and it may change them.
And you may think in the moment, right, that what you're offering is not
Yeah.
significant, or what
Yeah.
for, when in reality, in that moment in time, can be the biggest thing for the person
Yeah.
that can help them create change later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so sometimes it's just offering that, that kindness or that gesture, of support, and that can really make, shift things, for a person. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm glad that we got into this, this topic. And if for men out there, that are listening, or for whoever's watching, our podcast, if you ever feel like this, don't be afraid to seek out professional help. Reach out, seek out some services, with a therapist. Services are confidential. You can learn to develop a relationship with your therapist so that you can put yourself in a position that is more favorable. And just like anything, right? Like, you go to the doctor, you go see specialists for certain things. Well, meeting with a therapist is also, a specialty that you can tap into when dealing with mental health struggles and so forth. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
anybody that watches our podcast too, feel free to, if there's an area of struggle, I always try to be a voice of reason, a voice of hearing. Feel free to shoot us a message on IG too, maybe I could provide some linkage to somebody that may need some support with mental health.
sure.
So yeah, feel free to reach out. We're always here. Okay.
Well, you guys have a good one. Take care, and stay tuned for the next podcast. Be
All right.
well.
Thank you.